Hi guys, my name is Minhaj Ansari and you're watching another tutorial on C programming, and today I'll be talking about functions. So a function is simply a group of statements that performs a specific task, and your program can have many different types of functions and each function can perform its own specific task. So far, since you've started C programming, so far you've been using the main function inside every program you've written. And you've been adding statements inside the body of your main function. So the main function is a requirement in every C program. Without the main function, your program will not execute. It will not work at all. Similarly, you can create your own functions and you can add statements inside those functions, and those statements will execute to perform a specific task. So let me give you an example of a simple function. And I'm going to explain to you the structure of the function in a moment. Let me first write it. So this right here, this is a very simple function. And now the first word, this specifies the type of the value which will be returned by the function. So functions also return values. Functions can return integers, functions can return doubles, function can return float. So the data type of the value which would be returned by the function is written right here. And if your function is not returning any value at all, so then you write void right here. And in this case, my function is not returning anything, so I've written void. But I'm going to give you an example of a function that actually returns a value. So now the second word is the name of the function, and you can name your function anything you want. In this case, I've named my function println. And now the third part of the function is the parenthesis. And in between the parentheses, you simply specify the number of values and the type of values which your function is going to receive as input. So functions also take input and functions process those input and they produce an output. So you specify the input which will be received by the function right here in between the parentheses, and I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. So right now my println function is not receiving any input, so that's why I've left it blank. So the body of the function is enclosed by the curly braces, and you simply add the statements inside the body of your function. So in this case, the println function is simply going to print my name is Minhaj in the output screen. I've only added one printf statement inside the body of my println function. So now in order to use a function, you have to call the function from another function. So what I'm going to do is that, and in order to call a function, you simply write the name of the function followed by the parenthesis and a semicolon. So in this case, the main function is calling the println function. And since the main function is calling another function, so the main function can also be called the caller function, because it is calling another function, and in this case it is calling the println function. So what happens is that when I run the program, the main function will call the println function, and the statements inside the body of the println function will then be executed. So this statement printf my name is Minhaj, this will be executed, and my name is Minhaj will be printed in the output screen. So let me show you what I mean. Let me just run my program. So my name is Minhaj is printed in the output screen. So this is the basic idea of a function. And now let me show you a function that returns a value. So I'm going to write a function that's going to return an integer value. And since it's returning an integer value, so I have to specify the data type of the value. And I'm going to write int right here. And I'm going to change the name of my function to return num. So if your function returns a value, you have to write the return keyword inside the body of your function. So I'm going to write return right here, and after the return keyword you have to write the value which the function will return, or the expression which will evaluate to a value which will then be returned by your function. So since my function is going to return an integer value, so I'm simply going to write an integer value right here, and I'm just going to write 45, for example. So the return num function will return the value 45. I can also write an expression right here, so I can write 5 plus 3. So in this case, first the expression will be evaluated, so the expression will become 8, and 8 is also an integer. So the return num function will be returning the integer value 8. So just for simplicity, I'm just going to write the integer 45. And now my main function is going to call the return num function. But before that, I have to create an integer variable which will store the value returned by my return num function. So I've defined my integer variable a, and I'm going to assign a the return num function. So now what will happen here is that the main function will call the return num function, and inside the return num function, this statement will be executed, and this statement will return the integer 45 back to, right here, where your function was called from. So 45 would be returned here, and then 45 would be assigned to the integer variable a. And in the end, I'm going to use my printf statement to print the value of my integer variable a. So when I run the program, I'm going to get 45 printed in my output screen. So that's the 45 right there. Similarly, your function can also accept input. It can accept input from the main function, and it will process the input and return the result back to the main function. And in order to do that, you simply have to first write the parameters. So I'm going to create a simple function called add, and it will simply add two integer values. So for that, I have to specify two integer variables inside the parentheses. And this is also called the parameter of my function. And now what my add function will do is that it will simply add the value of the variables. And first I'm going to create another integer variable sum, and sum will be equal to a plus b. And in the end, my function is going to return the value of my integer variable sum. So now inside my main program, first of all, I'm going to define my integer variables a and b, and I'm going to pass them to my add function. And to do that, simply write the name of your function add, and just write the name of your variables inside the parentheses of the add function. So just add a and b right here. So now what will happen is that a and b, the values of a and b will be copied inside the parameter variables a and b. And a and b would be added, the values of the variables a and b would be added, and it would be stored inside the integer variable sum, and then the function would return the value of the integer variable sum. So let me just define another integer variable right here, int result. And this result would receive the sum of the integer variables a and b. And in the end, I'm just going to print the result right here. So since the values of the variables a and b is 5, so what will happen is that 5 would be sent, first of all, you're going to write the variables inside the parentheses of your add function, and the values of these variables a and b, they will be copied inside the integer variables a and b, which you have written in the parameter list of your function. So this means the variable a right here will receive the value 5, and the variable b right here will receive the value 5. And then you're going to add the variables a and b. So 5 plus 5 would be 10, and it will be stored inside the integer variable sum. And in the end, the function is going to return the value of the variable sum. So that means right here, the value 10 would be received. So your add function will return the value 10 right here, and that 10 would be stored inside the integer variable result. So in the end, the printf statement would print the value of the integer variable result, and I would get 10 printed in the output screen. Similarly, I can change the values of my variable, so I can write 10 right here and 50 right here, and I can define num1 to be equal to 10 and num2 to be equal to 50. And inside the add function, I can simply pass my variables num1 and num2. And what will happen is that again, they would be added and I would get the output 60 printed in the output screen. So these right here, this is called the argument of the function. When you pass the variables into your function, these are called the arguments of your function. And these variables right here, these are called the parameters of your function. So this is all it about functions. And if you have any questions, please ask them in the comment section. And thanks for watching this video.